Welcome to Real Talk Thursdays. This is where I'm going to share my story, my journey, all the circumstances, situations, and tools that I used to get to where I'm at today that made me who I am today. And maybe I can help somebody else out there that may be going through the same situation, maybe have the same scenarios, just by sharing my story. So each Real Talk Thursday is going to be a section and chapter of my life. So let's see what this chapter is all about today. Now, as I climb over this little rockery thing and go into this darker trail, it's not really steep or anything. It's kind of flatter, the flattest part of the hike, honestly. And it's parts of it are meadowy with trees coming over, or what we call bushwhacking, but we're not really bushwhacking, but we are it's grown into the point where both sides of me is brushing up against brush and trees and branches and things of that type. So some of it's really close proximity and some of it's more open, but I had, I think, 2 more washouts that I had to cross also. So I needed to make sure that I was at that point or could see the trail too on the other side from the marker. And when I started, that's when my mind, when I made the decision and I noticed that it was starting to get dark and I looked at the dark trail, that's when my mind started going. I was pretty solid up until then. I had that seed of the thinking about bears with the bear bell guy. And then once it started getting dark, I started thinking about that too. And I'm like, that group that just went by, how long ago was that? And it was a good 30 minutes before me, I think, before I actually walked out of there. But in that 30 minutes, I'm like, was that enough time and enough voices? Because they were pretty talkative. They were talking a lot and making enough noise that you're not going to be walking down this trail and come around a corner or a hill or out of this brush or out of this section where the washout is and startle a bear, because that's not what you want to do, right? They say to talk or, make some kind of noise of some sort, or that's why he had the bell, right? Or just to not startle an animal. Well, then my mind just started going. So now I'm like, great. Do I talk? Do I sing? Do I whatever? So for a little bit of the hike, I started singing because I'm not going to lie, it was getting into my head about what if I walk around the corner and I see this bear? How am I going to respond to this? Then I started going through it in my head, if you see a black bear, what do you do? If you see a grizzly, what do you do? Do you know the difference between a grizzly and a black bear? And, I'm going through this checklist, yes, and yes, I know what I do. Yes, I know what to do. What if it's a cougar? What if you see a cougar? And in my mind, it's shoot, if you see a cougar, you are toast. Maybe not. Maybe not. I don't want to find out. What do you do then? What do you do if you see big animals in the woods, right? I mean, your fight or flight mode is totally going to come out. And do you actually know what you're going to do until you're in that moment? Probably not. Because it's not like you're going to rehearse it or you have any kind of practicing, for friggin' Pete's sakes. So I'm trying to check my brain and check my thoughts and be okay, so what do I need to do? So part of this, I'm hiking and I'm singing to myself. First of all, anybody that knows me knows I don't sing, period. So the fact that I'm even singing right now, even though I'm by myself, was a whole thing. So I'm singing and I'm singing songs, and then I'm just okay, I'm done singing. And then I'm hiking more, and it's getting darker and darker. And I'm trying to think of things. And at one point I remember looking at the trail and being am I even on the right trail? Am I even on the right path? Did I not take a turn? Did I, twisty-turvy into a different place? Am I going to come out at the trailhead? Me getting into this, I don't want to say panic state because I wasn't panicked, but just a questioning myself state. I was on the verge of spiraling, of not trusting my judgment, of not trusting that I knew what to do, of not trusting that if a situation was to come up, that I didn't have or would not know what to do to keep myself safe. Now, I had to make a decision. Am I going to ride this wave and keep spiraling to where then I'm like a freaking basket case by the time I do see my friends? Or am I just going to reassure that I'm fine and I've been fine and I've rocked this day completely fine since I've been by myself, and that everything is okay, and like reassuring myself that, like I'm in the moment, I'm hiking, I'm doing my thing, I'm on this trail, we're good. Because once you get through those washouts and that like meadowy part with the brush and the trees being close, it's almost like you're walking down like a really small rivery flowing path. Okay. So going down this, you're like kind of jumping over rocks and whatnot. And so does it look like a trail? No, it looks like a river. And that's when my mind was starting to play tricks on me. Like, are you even on the path? Did you take the wrong turn and go down the river and you're not on the path and all of this? I mean, it was like ridiculous. So at times I would turn around and look behind me to see, like, do I recognize this? Because trails look very different on the way up than on the way down. They look very different because you're paying attention to different things. You're paying attention to your footing. You're paying attention to, your surroundings, but from a completely different angle. And so I turn around to what I did know and I was like, oh yeah, this looks familiar from this angle. And so I knew I was fine. Plus, I would look at the prints on the ground when it was muddy or there was like sections where there wasn't rocks to see if there was prints of like hiking boots and whatnot. And I would see those and I'm like, okay. And I'd be like reassured, oh, there's a hiking boot here. We're good. I'm on the trail, right? Now, as I keep going, I'm like getting to this like rockery part that is kind of like that little river thing that I was telling you about. And I had a ways to go with that. And I stopped for a second and I could have sworn I heard my friends. I could have sworn that I heard them talking, just like talking about, the hike. I couldn't really make out the words that they were saying, but it was like they were really far away. They were faint and I could hear them. And I was like, oh, sweet. They're not too far behind me. This is going to be great. I can totally hear them. So I send out the call that we do, right? I send out the call and there was no response. And then I couldn't hear the talking anymore. And I'm like getting in my head again. Like, am I seriously hearing my friends talk because I want to hear them so bad? I'm done being alone on this mountain that my brain is literally making up scenarios and situations that I'm hearing my people that are not there. I'm like, is this really happening right now? Like questioning it. And I was like, you know what? I'll wait a couple minutes. And if I don't see my friends, then I know that my mind is playing tricks on me. And I was like, okay, so here I go as I'm hiking out. I get all the way through. And when I come out the trailhead, I was like, oh, I'm in the right place. I made it all the way back. And when we started, I think there was 3 cars at the trailhead and then our car that was down further. And then the camper's car was further down and all the cars were gone except for 2 cars, right? And I'm like, and our car was a little ways down because the road was kind of washed out and it was too big of a bump for this car to go over. And so our car was further down. And so at first I take my pack off and I drink the rest of my water. I eat a little bit of a snack and I check to see what time it is. And I'm like, okay, it's 8:30. It's 8:30 now. And I'm like, okay, so I'm like, I hiked really slow and like 15 minutes, if those were those voices that I heard were my friends, then they'll probably be out here, what have you. And, it's getting darker. I can still see, but it's like now there's like no bright sunlight, right? And it's definitely getting darker. And I'm like, I probably have a solid hour of actual light left before it's complete darkness out here. And I'm like, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. So hopefully they come in 15 minutes, right? And so I start pacing because I'm like, I'm just going to keep walking because I want to keep warm because it started to get cold out. I had all my layers on that I had with me at this point because I put those on when it started to get dark because I didn't want to get too cold out there because that's a whole nother thing, right? When you get too cold. And I didn't want to be like looking at my phone either because I didn't want my eyes to adjust to my phone because when I would look up from my phone, I would literally see nothing. And if I'm out there on the side of this mountain by myself, I want to be able to have as much sight as I can in the dark, right? So I kept my phone not in front of my face. Not that I could really do much. It's not like you have internet out there. It's not like I can play, or play on my phone or talk or do whatever. I didn't have anything, right? I thought about journaling on my phone. I thought about recording myself on my phone and talking about this experience while I was doing it. But then at the same time, I didn't want to be super loud. I didn't want to be, as it was getting dark, I started getting more fearful. I started getting more scared. And I started thinking about, cats hunt at night. Cougars are cats. It is dusk. Would they be hunting? Or, are they going to find me on the mountain? I don't know, but they can smell me way before I can see or smell them, right? I'm in their element. I'm in their backyard. I'm in their place. Same with bears. Bears can smell you miles away, right? So it's kind of like I'm at the mercy of what I'm going to do and whatever they decide. And I'm like trying to get out of my head. So I'm pacing. I'm thinking about stuff. I'm thinking about to-do lists. I'm like trying to distract myself with my thoughts so I don't go there. And it's getting darker and darker and darker. And right before, I think right when I get out of the trailhead, I have another freaking bee or wasp or whatever the frick it was. And I was like, at first I was like, did you seriously follow me from the waterfall? Because he was like dive bombing me. He didn't sting me or anything, but he was like super aggressive and dive bombing me. And again, I was having a conversation with this freaking bee, wasp, hornet, whatever. And I kept changing directions. And that's when I came up with, I'm just going to keep pacing and keep moving, because if I stopped, he would come at me and dive bomb me and be all in my face and, freaking going past my ears and like trying to get in my hair. And I'd already been stung 3 times. Like I was over it. But when I was continuously moving, he would not bother me. But the second that I would stop and just rest, he was like all over me. So I'm like, okay, so this is why I started pacing. So I did this for, I can't even tell you how long. I just remember holding my phone because I wanted to count the steps that I was actually doing and know the mileage by the time I was done doing all of this, if I even got the mileage that I wanted to get that day, because it was supposed to be a 10-mile hike, which we figured would probably end up being 12. And I wanted to see how close I could get, even though I was not summiting, clearly, with my people. So I'm doing this whole pacing thing, and then I look at my phone and I'm like, man, it's been a little while. I wonder how long it's been. And I look at my phone and it's 9:15. And I'm like, clearly that was not my friends. Now it's dark. I thought I had to, I'm like, oh, I have till 9:30 now. No. Did not have till 9:30. It was already dark. It was probably dark at 9, but my eyes were adjusted, and I'm walking in this path that I saw, and it was like getting in my head even more. I started hearing things, like sticks crackling, like things walking around. I heard little animals, and then I heard bigger things, or what I thought was bigger things, and I wasn't sure, and obviously I'm not going to go freaking investigate it. And so I'm assessing. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do here? It is 9:15. It is dark. Like the moon hasn't come up yet, but it is dark. I still do not know when my friends are coming. And then I started thinking all of these things. I'm like, I need to get set up here. I need to set myself up to where I feel safe, so I do not freak myself out even more, if you will. So my friend's car was up against some really thick, brush, trees, nothing large would be coming out from the front of her vehicle with how close she was to it and the way that the rocks were and all this. Nothing big would be coming out of that part of the forest because of how it was with what was there and everything. There might be some little, chipmunk or maybe some little animal that would be scurrying around there. But at that moment, I didn't give a flying F about any of the small animals, raccoons, whatever, chipmunks, pick one. I don't care. Possum, whatever it is, skunk. I don't care. I don't even care what it is. If it was small, fine. I can handle that. My worry was the big things. My worry was the big cats. My worry was the things with claws that are huge, hundreds of pounds, and that I would be tossed around like a rag doll with. That's what I was worried about. And when I'm hearing crackling sticks in the woods, I'm not investigating or messing around. So I get real quiet. I get in front of Andrea's car, and I'm against the brush and the front of Andrea's car, and I'm like kind of cornering myself and making myself this little like corner to where I feel like I'm somewhat protected by two walls, and I'm open up to the street and the rest, or the dirt road and the rest of the wilderness, basically, that I could see, or the woods that were across, or what have you. And I'm sitting there for a while, and I'm not making any noise, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like sitting there cross-legged. And at one point, my leg falls asleep, and I can still hear some things. It's super quiet. You can hear, like, at one point, I'm like, am I hearing music off into the like mountains? Is it echoing off the mountains? Am I hearing music from somewhere that's echoing? Because there's no pollution of any other noise. There's nothing. There's no light pollution out there. And what I mean by that is there's no light interfering. So if there's no light, there's no light. Like, you are from the stars, and the moon, period, is your light. Now, thank you for the full moon that happened that night, because when the moon came up, I could actually see because of how bright it was. If it would have been a new moon where there was no moon, I would not even have been able to see the hand in front of my face. So I was so very thankful that it was a new moon, and it was a super new moon. Thank you. And it was so bright that I could see the road, and I could see I could see a ways. Like, I couldn't see forever and ever, but I could see a ways around me, like a good circle around myself, right? And at one point, my leg falls asleep, and I'm like, this isn't really good, because if I have to move fast and my leg is like the tingly asleep, that's not going to be good. So I had to figure out a position and get my leg back to not being tingly and asleep. But then I had to get a good position to where, if something was to come at me and get startled and charge me, like, where would I go? What, am I going to run off into the woods? No. Am I going to run? No. Do I need to look big? Yeah. And I'm like, am I really willing to, if something was to come out here right now, am I really willing to just look big and fight with this in the dark? Like, I think I would in the daytime, but in the dark is like a different level. You know what I mean? It's like a different level of vulnerability in their backyard, for frick's sakes. So I'm like, okay, I'm thinking worst case scenario. A big animal, whether it's bear, cougar, what have you, could come out of the woods, any of these places right here next to me, okay? Any of the stuff across from me. What is my best chance scenario with what I got here? With my friend's car that's right here, this thick brush and this like rockery thing that's next to me that's kind of protecting me and a little bit of the wall behind me. Like, what is my best chance? Because running is not an option, and looking big in the dark, I'm not entirely sure that that's gonna work, right? And I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to go underneath the car. Like, this is where I was at mentally, people. Okay? I'm gonna have to go underneath the car. I started to get really cold, and so I had this blanket that I was sitting on a lot of the times, and I wrapped my legs up in this blanket, and then I put my legs, I like inched myself so my legs were underneath the front part of my friend's car. This helped so much with like the wind, and like it started to get like a dewy, like it was like dewy. So it was like I was wet, but it wasn't raining or anything like that. Like, it was humid and muggy, but it was colder. And I wasn't walking or moving because I felt like I was a freaking target. So I couldn't do that anymore to keep warm. So I'm wrapped my legs. I have my legs underneath my friend's car, and I take my big pack and I put it in front of me, and I'm kind of like up on my elbows, and I put the pack in front of me. And then I take my hiking poles and I put them up next to me with the pokey part sticking out towards, the little open part, right? Now, was this overkill? I don't know. Was it making me feel better? Hell yeah. It was making me feel better. I felt like I had my little fortress set up that if anything was to happen really quick, or if I see something big or something comes at me fast or whatever, All I got to do is shove myself the rest of the way under my friend's car, and my hiking poles are there to either stop it or make it pause for a second or hurt it enough to leave me alone or what have you. And then I just sit under the car and wait for friends, So as I'm sitting there and I think I hear music off into the distance and I'm like, oh, is that music? And then the music's not there anymore. So I'm literally sitting there just frozen because I can hear things. I can hear things walking. And I'm not even sure if that's real. And then I think I hear my friends talking again. And I'm like, oh, they're coming. I can hear them. They're coming. And I'm looking at the trailhead and I'm waiting for headlamps. I'm waiting to hear walking. I'm waiting to hear all this stuff. And then all of a sudden it goes away. And I'm like, this is such a trip. How is my brain doing this? I want to see them so bad that my brain is literally remembering sounds and making me feel like I'm hearing these things. What the heck? I truly understand why people can get lost and think other things when you're alone and get in your head, and people can get lost in the woods and who knows what. Just by this little experience. If I allowed myself to spin out of control, who the frick knows? Right? But I can only control what I can control. So my crazy rumpetus is halfway under my friend's car, wrapped up in a towel so I don't freeze my frickin' buns off because I already started shivering. Being quiet and just waiting for my friends because that's all I can do. I can't get in the car. I can't walk down the forest road because the forest road is 5 kilometers from a main road. And then that main road is next to a campground. Could I have made it 5 kilometers earlier and been at the campground? I have no idea, right? I was thinking all these scenarios. I should have went to town with those people. I should have done this. I should have done that. And then what is that doing? Nothing. It's just telling me what is not happening. But right now, I'm safe. I'm not moving. I'm quiet as a freaking mouse. I'm just chilling, sitting there, waiting for my friends. And at this point, I'm beginning to shiver. I check my phone again. Now it is 10 p.m. 10 p.m. So I've been in the dark like this for an hour. So then I'm sitting there completely quiet and I hear something walking. Okay? I hear something walking. Now, I felt like my heart was going to come out of my throat. It's just flung right up into my throat. Talk about the fear, adrenaline response like no other. And then, of course, my logical brain's coming in is that even real? Because I've been hearing my friends and I've been hearing music and I've been hearing all this stuff. And I'm like, is that even real? Am I really hearing something? But because of my body's response, I'm like, I'm just going to be quiet and I'm going to sit here. And I felt like I look up this forestry road and I see an animal, but it's so far up that I cannot tell what it is. It's not huge, I don't think, but I can see something and I can hear it walking on gravel and I can hear the gravel walking. And I am wanting to poop my pants, okay? Because I cannot tell if it is coming towards me or if it is moving away from me. And I'm not taking my eyes off of this thing that I think that I see. And I am sitting there and I'm trying to breathe very quietly. And I felt like my heart, you could hear it pounding. And I'm like, this thing is totally going to hear my heart beating like a freaking racehorse because I'm freaking out right now, but I want to be quiet. And I felt like I was playing hide and seek for Pete's sakes. And I had a plan, whatever, but I'm freaking out and I'm still hearing it walk. And then I'm paying attention to the sound of the gravel and it sounds like it's going away. And then I'm seeing this animal and eventually I don't see it anymore. So what I think happened, or maybe not, because I was hearing things, this animal came out from the woods, which was what I was hearing, moving around when I was getting ready. It came out onto the gravel road and it was walking down the forestry road away from me and eventually either went into the woods across the way, went into the woods way up, or went up the forestry road and went into the woods on the other side. Or maybe even gone into the trailhead. I don't know, but I'm not investigating it. I'm not checking it out. It seemed very real to me. It seemed like I could see it. I could hear it. I could hear the whole time it was walking away from me. I'm telling you right now, if that would have been towards me, I probably would have had a heart attack, for Pete's sakes. I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what animal this is. It was not like a rabbit or a small thing either. It was bigger. I don't know what it was. I don't even know if it was real, okay? But I can tell you right now that I was from that point on, I was like, it was like every time I would get a handle on something, it would like up level me being scared, up level something else of me having to keep my calm in a high stress situation and not move or do anything. And I just freaking sat there and I'm like, oh my gosh. And my friends are still not there. And then, I don't know if you've seen this movie, but back in the day, there was this movie about this bear, about these people that got into an airplane crash and they're trying to get back to civilization. And then there's like this crazy bear that's like following them around and they end up having to fight this bear because he won't leave them alone. And why in the hell would I think of that movie out of all the movies on the planet Earth? And I haven't even seen that movie for like 20 freaking years. Why would I think about that movie at that point? I was like, awesome. I'm so glad that was pulled out of my file cabinet of my brain. And it's just playing in my brain as I'm sitting here after I saw this animal. And I'm just like sitting there. So now I'm sitting there. My brain is like I'm freaking myself out and trying to calm myself down at the same time. It was a trip. It was a trip. I was sweating and shaking at the same time. My adrenaline was making me crazy. My brain was making me crazy. I was making myself crazy. It was crazy all around, as if I hadn't been crazy enough already during the daytime. This went on for 45 minutes. Okay? I'm sitting there knowing that there's something out there that has walked away from me. I don't know what it is. There's animals out there or whatever. Now, also, in this 45-minute span, I think it was like around 10:15 or 10:20-ish. I started seeing flashes of light and I would get excited because I saw this flash of light in the dirt road and I'm like, oh, is that a headlamp? And so I'm like leaning over to see, because if I lean over a little bit to my left, I could see the trailhead without having to get up or what have you. So I lean over a little bit to see if there's headlamps at the trailhead. Nothing. And I'm like, where is this light coming from? This doesn't make any sense to me. So then I'm waiting there for a little bit longer with this 45 minutes of totally freaking scared about this animal and thinking about the stupid movie that I shouldn't be thinking about. And I'm sitting there trying not to lose my business. And I see the flash again. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I'm like looking over, no headlamps. And then there's the thunder. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Lightning? This is lightning. Now there's lightning. We're having lightning. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, and I wanted to just start laughing because I'm like, this is bananas crazy. Lightning. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I started freaking out. So from like 10:15, 10:20, I don't even know how long it went on. Well, actually I do. I do know the minutes, but I'm not going to tell you yet. So starting at 10:20, I am like, now there's lightning. I can hear thunder. All of the things that have happened. I've been in the dark for like 2 hours now, and I am losing it. And I'm like, okay, what if something happened to my friends? What if one of my friends got hurt? They're not back yet. Why are they not back yet? And so then now I'm getting worried about them. Now I'm switching my anxiety for myself and all this craziness, and I'm switching it over to now, what if something happened? What if they need my help? What if I need to help them off the mountain? And there's no way I have any way of knowing that. Did they see my note? Are they even close to me? What the frick? Like, I thought it was going to be around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and it's not. And it's not. And I'm just like running over and over these scenarios in my head. And when are they coming? And how much longer? And holy shit, I'm over this. I just want to be in the car. I just want to be sitting in the warm car. I just want to be driving back to our campsite. I just want to be sitting by the river. I just want heat. I just want water. I have a huge, huge thing of water right inside this car that I cannot open because I do not have the keys. It was torture. It was freaking torture. Here it is, 10:45, and I see this flash of light again. And now I'm getting mad because I'm like, what? I'm just going to sit here in a lightning storm and I have no idea. Like I was getting, I was like done. I was done. And I'm like, I have no idea when my friends are coming. And I'm just going to sit here. And then I lean over and I look over to the left to look back at the trailhead. And I lean over and I see this square. I see this square and it's moving. It's kind of moving back and forth like somebody's walking, but like shining this square of light on the road. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, am I even seeing that? Is that real? Or is this just my freaking mind playing tricks on me again because I'm pissed off and done with this whole situation? And the square keeps getting closer and closer. And now I can hear louder and louder and louder walking and steps and what have you. And I was like, I'm getting up. And so I get up and this square of light is like 10, 15 feet in front of me. And I say, hi. And my bestie goes, Shauna? And I go, yeah. And I go, you have no idea how good it is to actually hear your voice for real. I'm like, are you real? And she's like, come here. And she like ran up to me and she gave me a hug and she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I mean, physically, yeah. I just gave her a hug and I'm like, oh my God, she's real. This is my friend's here. My friend is finally here. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm shivering. And she gave me her coat and told me to put it on. She's like, you're freezing. And I'm like, dude, you have no idea what I've experienced. And she's like, what happened? She's like, I've been worried about you. And I pretty much like ran the last part of the trail as much as I could to get to you because I didn't know if you were here. I didn't know if you'd gone to town. I didn't know if you were at the waterfall. I didn't know anything. And like, so then we're like exchanging stories because they had a whole experience too with worrying about me and not realizing I wasn't with the group fully and like this whole thing that they had as well as mine. And so we're like sharing these stories and then the other two come out from the trailhead and they come down to the car. And even though they're walking towards the car, I had this overwhelming, like, get in the car, like this overwhelming of, I don't want to be out here anymore. Like, I don't want to be out here anymore. I want to be in the car. And then once I got inside the car and with the door closed, which was not very long, it was like 5, maybe 10 minutes after they came out, I like had this whole thing of relief. Like, I'm finally safe. I'm finally safe and in this car, and just like a huge like breath of air, like a huge just let go of like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? And then like, I got so tired because of all that adrenaline I was probably running for, I don't even know how long, but I was so happy where I was. And I probably said it like 5 times. I'm so happy that you guys are here. And I'm so happy that I'm sitting in this car with you right now. And asked them about their adventure and asked them about their trip. And then sure enough, the lightning and thunder gets worse and worse and worse. And the whole time, you know, as we're driving back to the campground, it's just like more and more and more. And then now it's raining and more lightning and more thunder and rain. And probably like all night, probably like until 4:00 in the morning, this was happening. And you know what? I might have been scared about that. I might have been scared of that being in a tent. If you would have asked me before my experience that day, at that point, I would have taken that thunder and lightning storm over what I did in the dark on that mountainside any day. It was so, I didn't even care. I was just like watching the lightning and the thunder, laying there to go to sleep, all the things. It was crazy. It was crazy. Thank goodness the next day after we woke up, it was just an easy day. An easy day where we went to the hot springs, just hung out, chilled by the river. Easy, relaxing, nothing. I mean, we did exploring, but it was nothing like we experienced the day before. There's so many things that I learned about myself, about the mountain, about what hiking can do, what your brain can do, what you do in a situation when things aren't feeling right and when adrenaline's running and when you're like, oh, fuck, you know, like, what do I do? Like, so many problem solving things, like, so many things. There's so many things that I learned. But I can tell you that these lessons that I have learned and the things that I have learned about myself, I now know how to do things differently, how freaking strong I am, what I've overcome mentally, and now the things that I can do that may have been a little scary before that are not so scary anymore because of what I've done. That was way scarier. Way scarier. I definitely conquered some fears. I definitely understand how my brain works and how it comes out to trick me, and knowing how to check myself and how to check in and how to keep my shit together, if you will, from experiencing something like this. It was an amazing learning experience, and it was an amazing hike that I ended up doing 10.5 miles. And the hike ended up being 12 point something total, and I ended up doing 10.5 with all of my shenanigans also. And so I got a good hike out of it. I got good mileage and elevation also by going up and down and all over the friggin' place. So I was proud of myself. And thankful and grateful that everything ended up being okay, that my friends got to summit, I was fine, and that we ended up having, a really good trip, that our trip ended up being exactly what we needed it to be, with, a little bit of a journey, a little bit of an exciting journey with a dash of adrenaline and overcoming some things. So I just wanted to share that story with you. I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear what you guys got out of it hearing this story. You want to share some stories with me about what you have overcome, some fears that you've had to fight, some things that you've had to do. I would love to hear that. Thank you for listening to my crazy adventure hiking story. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, learned something new, or got some gems to take away that will boost your week. I release a new episode each week, so make sure to click that follow button to not miss what is coming next. If you love the show or want to share a story, send me a quick message. I love hearing from listeners. If you know someone who needs this episode in their life, go ahead and share it with them. I'm sure they would love you for it. If you are looking to connect more, check out the show notes for all the social links, my website. I would love to hear how this episode helped you and what you loved about it. If there's a topic you want to hear about, send that too. All right, ladies, now is the time to release your inner power.